And here we are, Betty, and boys and girls and moms and dads at Stratford upon the Avon River. This is just a beautiful little town, and it's one that is just really great to visit. Don't you think so, Betty?
Oh, sure. And what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear Stratford on Avon?
Well,
one name alone.
Shakespeare. That's
you know
right.
what we used to do when we were kids? I remember we would say, God, this doesn't fit here really, but shake. Then spear, and you'd poke someone in the ribs.
Uh-huh.
So you go shake, spear, box on the ear, kick in the rear.
I never heard that one before.
That was kid stuff. You know, some things come back. I guess as you get older, more things
More of those things do come back to you, right?
Silly things.
Well, you know, this is also the home of the Royal Shakespearean Company, and there are 3 theaters here that the Royal Company has in Stratford. There's the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, the Swan Theatre, and the Other Place. Isn't that interesting?
That's what it's called, the Other Place.
The Other Place, right, yeah. And we're going to visit now. We're going to go into this building, which will then take us to the birthplace of Shakespeare, and we'll learn a little bit about Shakespeare and his family. His father was very famous here.
The date the house was built is unknown, but the architectural features suggest late 15th or early 16th century. The building consists of oak beam frames, which sit on a low stone foundation wall. The spaces between the timbers are filled in with wattle and daub. It was in this house that William Shakespeare was born.
The house today closely resembles the earliest picture that we have of the birthplace, which was done in 1769.
The simple furnishings are typical of an Elizabethan middle-class house, although none of the furniture actually belonged to the Shakespeare family. The only piece connected with Shakespeare is this chair, which is alleged to have been his drinking chair from the Falcon Inn at Bidford. The kitchen has a wide-open hearth, where all the cooking would have been done, and ox, sheep or pigs would have been roasted on this huge spit over an open fire. A dangerous place for a child, but something which certainly hadn't been overlooked.
Well, this is an interesting, curious device for teaching a child to walk. The child was placed inside the metal collar, around its back, and then he or she would hold on to the arm, and they would then be able to walk round in a circle, literally, and this would keep them up. They would learn how to walk without falling down and keep them away from the perils of the fire.
Tradition has it that the birth took place here in this bedroom, which has been drawing visitors since the 17th century.
Well, I'll tell you, this was just beautiful visiting his house. But we're also now going to visit Anne Hathaway's cottage, as we see right here. And this, of course, is such a beautiful, beautiful place that they've also kept, well, almost all of these places that they've kept in Stratford, they've kept up, and it's just absolutely wonderful inside.
Well, we know that Anne was born in this house. Her father was a prosperous farmer in the area during the mid-16th century. But of course, 400 years ago, you wouldn't find the documentation such as diaries, portraits, things like this. So of course, Anne's life is all rather sketchy. But we know that she grew up here to the age of 26. And when young William Shakespeare, who belonged to a prosperous family from the town, came to court her here, they sat on this old seat, which of course it was the Hathaways themselves who preserved this particular relic in the house as being where Shakespeare and Anne got to know each other better. It would be quite an experience sitting on it now, but presumably 400 years ago, when people generally were somewhat smaller perhaps than we are today and wore more layers of clothing, the odd splinter wouldn't matter. But many visitors who sit on it now found how uncomfortable it really is.
The rooms are typical of the period, and unlike Shakespeare's birthplace, much of the furniture here actually belonged to the Hathaway family. including this magnificent bed. But it was in Henley Street that William and Anne were to live.
They were married during Advent, during November 1582, and once they were married, as far as we can tell, as William was the eldest son in his family, he would have taken Anne from here and they would have gone the 1.5 miles into Stratford to Henley Street, because being the eldest son, provision would have been made within that family for William to take up residence with his new wife. And that's, of course, where they continue to live. Susanna, their eldest daughter, was born there in March of the following year, 1583. The twins were born 2 years after that, and of course at the age of 24, Shakespeare left Stratford to commence his career in London.
Betty, I want to read some things from November 1580 from the old paper there. It says, amongst the local wills this year was that of Richard Hathaway, the Shottery farmer who died in September. His eldest daughter, Anne, now aged 25, is to get £6, 13 shillings and 4 pence if and when she marries. Then we go to November 1582, and from the old journal it says, of the marriages this year, the gossip's favorite has been Anne Hathaway's. With a small dowry, she could not hope for much, and so she married William, the 18-year-old son of luckless John Shakespeare, once our high bailiff. And he's fallen on very hard times and is beset by all sorts of troubles. The marriage was a rather hasty one, as they are expecting their first child in May. But let us hope that being 8 years older than William, she will bring a steadying influence to bear and thus help to restore the family fortunes. Then it goes on to say, and he was often seen hanging around the Guildhall watching the traveling players. And as expected, he took part in Davy Jones' amateur theatricals. And that was in November of 1582. This shows the old Garrick building, which is still there today. You can go in and you can stay there and also have something to eat. And of course, Garrick was the first person that had a festival, a Shakespearean festival there in Stratford, from what I understand. Now, we talked about the 3 theaters that are there in Stratford, and we can see the pictures of them right here. You know, Betty, this is so beautiful. They have kept this town so gorgeous.
It looks immaculate.
It is. It's just absolutely incredible. And of course, every year you can go to the festivals, and they're really going to have some big ones. And every year in April, they celebrate, of course, Shakespeare's birthday. And boy, do they have celebrations for that. Let me tell you, it's just really something.
Well, we have something here in the United States, in Colorado, is it? Aspen, Colorado?
No,
Where
I think
is
you're
it?
thinking about Ashland, Oregon.
Ashland, Oregon.
Yeah, Shakespeare
okay, the
Festival up
Shakespeare
there, right.
Festival. I knew it was somewhere.
Well, there are others around the country as well, but that's probably one of the closest ones that is to us here. Have you ever been?
No.
I did go once.
We went
and it was
by.
wonderful.
There was no activity there. We did drive by a beautiful.
Yeah, we did on
site.
one of our bus trips. That's right. When we went to Canada one year. That's true. Yeah, I did go up there once, and it was really great. It was very, very enjoyable. And a lot of people on our tour this time also went to see one of Shakespeare's plays the night that we were staying here. Betty, there we go. The barges. Oh, those are just so great.
Aren't they neat?
They are
truly are.
wonderful.
And I get romantic when I see them. I think of my kids, and all that sort of stuff. But it is a wonderful way to travel.
That's right.
So peaceful.
And this looks so peaceful, as we can see the Avon River right here in
And guess
Stratford.
what's in that picture? Mars' very favorite. I don't think
swans
we've
and the
had
ducks.
anything without a bird in it. You go out of your way so that you could put
Oh, I
a
didn't have
bird.
to. No, they came to
But
me this
you
time.
would.
They
But you-
came to
you
me this
would.
time,
You'd
right.
go walking to find a bird.
And there's one of the
gates.
little, what do you call that?
Those are gates, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Where
the-
they have to let the water up and let
Right.
the water out
Yeah,
so
for
that
the
the
canals,
boats can
right.
get through. Yeah.
The locks. That's what it is.
That's
the
it.
locks.
Oh, you're a
Couldn't
good
think
guy.
of it.
Yeah.
But look at all the flowers. I mean, they just keep this so beautiful and so nice. And some of the old things there, Betty. What you had a saying about the big wigs. Tell me about that.
I think that is so funny, honestly. Well, now let me think which one it was, because we did so much. Oh, well, when they had the big fireplaces, and the women in those days put beeswax on their face to make it, so it looked pretty. Well, they sit in front of the fire, and then what had happened? Drip, drip, drip. So when the one woman, if they looked at the other one kind of oddly, and she'd say, "Mind your own beeswax." So that's where we get that expression.
Right.
Mind
Well,
your own beeswax.
We're going on now to Oxford, which is just down the road a piece, as they say. And now Oxford, of course, is renowned the world over as having one of the oldest and most highly revered universities in Europe. And the city itself lies on the confluence of the rivers Cherwell and the Thames, or they call it the Isis locally. That's what they call it. And you know what surprised me after visiting here and taking a look at the town? I was just amazed to see how many colleges make up the university. I think it's something like 38 colleges make up the university. And a lot of these colleges are very small. They may have a student body of maybe from 200 to 400 people. So we're going to visit one of them today. And, I just did a little studying after we went and visited, and I found out more about this. And that's the great thing about going on a trip like this, because now you can go back and you can look up more information on it, because of course you get a lot while you're there, and you get a lot from the tour director and the guide. But when you come home, you can pick up some books if you don't pick them up along the way, and read more, and you can just enjoy it all over again. Don't you think so, Betty?
Yeah, I do think so. But it always wasn't tranquil.
Oh no!
There.
No, not at all.
What we see today is a beautiful, beautiful piece of architecture everywhere you look, and grounds that are beautiful. But my gosh, in the 13th century, there were a lot of rioting that went on between the townspeople and the students. So that was how they happened to start the residences, so they could lock the kids up, sort of at least have a place for them to stay.
Well, I think it's changed a lot, of course, now over the years,
yes,
and
of
course, I think in those days too, the colleges were just open to women. I mean, just open to men, but now they're open to both women and men, and people come from all over the world to study at Oxford.
My cousin got his doctorate there in Oxford.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would congratulate him, because I would imagine it's not a very easy thing to do. However, their education system is so much different than ours, because they work on a tutorial system, and that is that you would have a tutor or a fellow that would be maybe have a lecture, and that's open to all the public. The lectures are, but as far as your learning goes, you would sit with your tutor, or maybe 2 or 3 people would be there, and it would be sort of almost 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 or 1-on-3, something like that.
That's more helpful for learning, I would think.
Certainly is. I think so. But now we're going to go into one of the colleges, and we're going to go inside and take a look. We can't get into all of the buildings, of course, but we can get into the courtyards, and the courtyards are, I think, beautiful. We can also go into the chapels and, of course, the dining area as well, which we're going to do here. As we can see here at Lincoln College, it was closed, so that gave us the opportunity to visit there without anybody else being around. And so we sort of had the college all to ourselves. But our guide's going to explain a little bit more about the college or university system here in Oxford.
Living in the college, and you may maybe notice the name boards on the staircase we walked past, are as many of the teaching staff as they can get to live here. And those teaching staff who don't live here have rooms, because the teaching system is a tutorial system. So students are taught in 1s and 2s, not huge big lectures like so many newer universities. So at the beginning of your course, you'll choose what courses you're doing, you'll be assigned your tutors, you will meet week 1 with 1 or 2 tutors depending on what you're doing. They will give you a piece of work to produce. By next week you go away, you work independently in the college library here. If you need to, you go to the university library, but you probably don't need to. They have all the facilities you need in the college. And then at the beginning of week 2, you take your piece of written work to present at a tutorial, and you spend a couple of hours reading and discussing with your tutor, and then you go away with a new piece of work to do. So it's quite an intensive teaching system, but it also involves quite a lot of work by yourself. There are lectures, but if it's anything like my university, the lectures here I know are public lectures, so anybody can go, but also the series of lectures will basically give the various different teaching staff here a chance to air their research topics, so they will be the only people who have any idea at all what they're talking about. So students would come maybe the first or second week of October, be living in the rooms around this quadrangle, and some postgraduate students may be here already. They may have spent all summer here. John Wesley's rooms were up there. That's a bust of Wesley.
Well, now we can see a little bit more. Look how these grounds are kept up here. And now they tell us that only the fellows who teach there are the ones to be able to walk upon the lawn.
Oh, la-di-da. Why do they call it a lawn? Why don't...
It's a grassy area.
It's grassy. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking I said something wrong.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know where the word came from. But anyway, we're
Lawn.
going inside now one of the halls, and of course this is used as a dining hall. I read some of the menus, Betty, that they have, and they have some pretty good food there, let me tell you. Look at the ceiling up here, though. Isn't that beautiful?
I don't think their food is all that tasty.
Well, you didn't go to Oxford
I
University,
didn't go
did
to
you?
Oxford, but I'm just using English food as a basis of my comparison.
I don't know. I
here.
think this last trip I was pleasantly surprised. I thought we had
Maybe they used a little more salt.
there could be or a little more spices. Huh?
Spices,
Yeah.
yeah, because it was pretty bland.
Well, anyway, this is one of the beautiful, beautiful
Oh,
places
they're
that we can see.
beautiful. They
And
are.
we're going to go now to, and of course, almost all of the colleges themselves, you see that they're not terribly large, but they also have a chapel or a little church that is there. Now, I said 30. There are 39 official colleges at the university and 7 permanent private halls. Now, the private halls are mainly religious. There's Blackfriars, Champion, Greyfriars, Regent Park College, St. Bennett's Hall, St. Stephen's House, and Wycliffe Hall. Of those, 3 of those are Roman Catholic. 2 of those are Anglican, and 1 of those is Baptist. And as you can imagine, they are very, very interesting because in some of these you study, of course, theology, and at one of them you can go clear up to ordination. Now, this young man was just there. This was on a Sunday morning, and there were no services that we can see inside this chapel, but he was practicing there on the organ. And the organ was on the other side. There's a glass between the main part of the chapel and the little entryway, and that's where the organ was located, in the
Isn't that
entryway.
crazy?
Yeah.
But look at that windows.
Beautiful.
The windows that we have seen in Europe have been absolutely gorgeous,
Mhm.
haven't they?
Oh, yeah.
The workmanship,
Right.
the artistry.
Now, John Wesley
Yeah.
went to this and was one of the fellows here at this particular college. And, of course, there were several other religious people that were there of various denominations, mainly Protestant and Catholic denominations, and of course Wesley was one of them. And he evidently lived at this particular college as well. There was a bust up there of him that we saw on the wall. So this has very significance and a lot of
big
importance,
very
you know,
much history.
to all of us, I think, today.
Marv, we talked about this before we came on the air too, about a fellow.
Mm-hmm.
And you like to give a little explanation of what the title fellow
Well, I think-
entitles you to.
I think in relationship here to the universities would be an individual, either a man or a woman, who receives a stipend, also does research, and also would be sort of a tutor as well. They would sort of be doing all of that, I think, in one. So, and there are many, many fellows. You know what's so interesting, if anybody's interested, is to get on the Oxford website, and you can discover a lot of this, and you can see the pictures of the people that are teaching, the fellows that are teaching at the various colleges within the university, and some of the papers and the research that they're doing, Betty, and they look so young. You know, I mean, they're just brilliant, evidently, just brilliant. So that's just amazing. Now, this is another one of the, and you notice up there it says Rhodes? I wonder if this is where the Rhodes Scholars
I'm sure
go.
it is. You have to be very intelligent to get a scholarship to go to
Yes, indeed,
Oxford.
you do.
And
But there are scholarships that are available.
they are available.
Both for citizens of the UK and also for those that live outside of the United Kingdom. But let's listen to our guide explain about Radcliffe Square.
Put together an amazing collection of scientific and medical books, and in his will he left the money and the books to the library. So this is an early 18th century building. Radcliffe camera in this instance means just a room with an all-round view, or a building with an all-round view. It would have been built initially to house Radcliffe's collection of scientific books, but it has become just one more of the reading rooms of the Bodleian Library, which is the central library of the university. And most of the Bodleian is on the other side of the square, occupying all sorts of buildings that had previous functions. The Bodleian is copyright library, so one way to establish your copyright in this country is to lodge a book in the Bodleian. So, entitled as it is to receive a copy of everything that's published in Britain, its collection grows fairly rapidly. And last time I took the trouble to check the figures, it had something like 8 million books, a substantial proportion of which were manuscripts of one sort or another, medieval manuscripts, musical manuscripts. Most of those are underground over there in mile upon mile of corridor. And last time I knew anything about it, they were still using, I'm sure they must be getting onto computers now, but again, there was a period about 6 or 7 years ago when the newspapers were making a really big thing about the fact that still in the Bodleian, you went in and you went through a card catalogue and you filled in a form to request a book because it's a reference library. On that side of the square is Brasenose College. Famous students there have included John Buchan, who wrote 39 Steps, told you about him in Scotland. William Golding, who wrote Lord of the Flies. Is that novel familiar to you? The novel about... Yeah, and the film as well. And John Mortimer, who wrote Rumpole of the Bailey. Do you get that on television as well? He is a student there. And this side it's All Souls College. All Souls is a graduate-only college. To be elected a Fellow of All Souls, so it's one of the research jobs, is really regarded as one of the highest academic accolades in this country. I have to say, being a Fellow of All Souls, having that sort of brain doesn't necessarily go with having lots of common sense. There were a couple of members of Mrs. Thatcher's government who were Fellows of All Souls, and I don't know where they kept their brains, but it wasn't anywhere useful. Yeah. Lawrence of Arabia was a Fellow. Christopher Wren, who designed St Paul's Cathedral, which we will see in London, was a Fellow of All Souls as well. And the biggest buildings at the time were the churches, and this one did just fine for all of those purposes. So in the early days of the university, this was where they kept their collection of books until they began on the purpose-built cluster of buildings just round the corner there. And examinations were conducted here. Certainly in the early days when people wrote on parchment, nobody was going to waste anything as expensive as parchment on examinations, so exams were all conducted orally. And degree ceremonies were held here until probably about the 17th century. So John Wesley, Wycliffe, all of those religious reformers would at some time or other have preached in this church as well.
Oxford, it should mention, is a very compact city. Its main streets all radiate, I can't even say the word, I'll never get to Oxford, from Carfax Tower, which is in the center of the little town, and most of the colleges and university buildings are all within easy walking distance from the Carfax Tower. And Betty, again, like you had said too, everything looks so neat and so pristine, even though the buildings, of course, are centuries old. Everything is just kept up so immaculately and so beautifully. I would imagine that you could stay here for quite some time and enjoy yourself, is in that these lectures are all open to the public. I mean, you don't have to register at the university. Yeah. And it's really something. So there would be a lot to see and a lot to do. And if you do go to England and you want to go up to the Midlands, make sure that one of your stops is at Oxford University, and I'm sure that you'll be welcome there to one or more of the colleges, or also one of the residence halls there too, to learn more about it. We're going to learn a little bit more about this particular area as such, and as you can see here, here's one of the fine museums, in which there are many here in Oxford.
I like that sign, admission free.
Admission free, that's right. Well, that's so much for Oxford, unfortunately. We're going to go on, and our next show will take us to the beautiful palace at, guess where?
The chapel is also the burial place of many kings and queens. Now, Westminster Abbey, which we will see tomorrow, is the typical burial place in the past of kings and queens. But nowadays, St George's Chapel in the castle is used. So the Queen's parents, King George VI, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, her sister, Princess Margaret, her grandparents, her great-grandparents, are all buried in Windsor Castle, as is Henry VIII. He chose to be buried there because his favourite wife, Jane Seymour, was buried there.
And it's so beautiful out here in the country. As you can see, it's very pastoral there in front of us, and you can see Windsor Castle just barely off there in the distance. And this is another beautiful place that you must visit when you're in the Midlands of England. I think that this is a very, very exciting highlight to visit there, and you can take your time. This is also a beautiful little village here. There's a lot to see, and there's an awful lot to do. And we're going to go into the village as we're doing right now, and this is also I should mention the end of one of the train lines, as we see here, and this is the Windsor and Eton station, as you see right here, and that's the very end of it right there. Get off and you can walk right to the castle. Betty, that's all the time that we have right now, but if people are interested in trips, all they have to do is give you a call at
488-7443. I'll be waiting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.